How did that hit you? That, wait a minute, this is a lot of money. This is answering 23 points of information, including personal information about myself. Do I really want to do this to become a franchisor? How did you think about that?
Well, I think going back to the disc profile, we spent some time really thinking hard about it. We were trying to understand the process and more so the financial commitment, because I don't think most understand the initial financial commitment just to be able to sell a franchise and to establish an FDD, especially to secure an attorney as well. So, for us, that took about a year and a half to really gather the funds and to move in that direction.
Right.
It wasn't really so much a question as to would we be willing to publish that information. It was just gathering it and actually assembling it all together to make sure we were doing so accurately.
Welcome to the Franchise Hot Seat Podcast, where we talk about all things franchising. Now, here's your host, Dr. John P. Hayes.
Alex Gingold is my guest today on the Franchise Hot Seat, and we're going to talk about DonutNV. That's donut with an NV. Alex, do you have any people who get confused? They write out DonutNV?
They do, and that's actually somewhat intentional. So the thinking behind DonutNV and the rebranding from Cinnamony Donuts to what is now DonutNV was actually very intentional. We wanted a brand that made our guests ask questions about what is this. We wanted them to understand that we serve donuts, but we wanted it to be engaging. Yeah. And no matter how far or near you are to a DonutNV truck in person, looking at the name will typically bring our customers actually to the window to ask more about, is this Donut Nevada? What is this? How do you say this? And we usually just say it out loud. And they say DonutNV. Okay, I get it. So it's meant to be very engaging. It's actually a marketing tool as part of our system.
Yeah, good. So what was it called before DonutNV? What was the product called, your brand?
Originally it was Cinnamony Donuts, and that started in 2014.
Okay, so 2014, you start this business in a trailer, or was it in brick and mortar?
This was actually as a kiosk. So we got started as a small outdoor mall kiosk at the Philadelphia Premium Outlets right outside of the Philadelphia, PA area. And we launched as a 10 by 10 outdoor kiosk. Very simple menu, hot mini donuts, only in 2 flavors, cinnamon and powdered sugar, and fresh squeezed lemonade and just original lemonade.
And how did you get the idea to go, into the donut business in a kiosk? Because, there's Dunkin' Donuts, there's Krispy Kreme, there's lots of donuts out there.
There are. So many times we're asked, why donuts? Why did we get started with that? And for us, it was really about the flexibility of kind of the system we were building from the start. So I come from the insurance side of corporate America. My wife and partner, Amanda, comes from luxury retail management. We didn't, of course, enjoy corporate America. It just wasn't for us. And I've always been entrepreneurial back to 11 or 12 years old. So I've had multiple businesses along the years, from vending and amusements to just about anything you can name. So some of my earliest days were in quick service food with Subway and Rita's Italian Ice starting at age 13. And Amanda had very similar experience as well. So what we were seeing in our role in our corporate America positions was the lack of flexibility, the inability to use your PTO time, just unrealistic sales numbers and returns and things that would, of course, work against you in your commissions and bonuses and earnings. So we really went back to our roots and we said, we really enjoy quick service food. We like the emotion that's tied to that we get to see our customers have. And we wanted to pursue something in the food industry because we were foodies at heart. And we looked at a number of different opportunities, from pizzerias and restaurants to, you pretty much name business for sale, we looked at it. And there was just nothing that fit in, one, into our budget at the time, and 2, that really fit our lifestyle. So we didn't want to, we had a lot of friends that owned pizzerias that were in restaurants, and we saw how much time went into being at a brick and mortar 7 days a week. And it was a lot. And as we went through that process, for a number of reasons, just none of those opportunities worked out. We must have looked at least 30 plus brick and mortar shops of some kind. And actually what kind of transpired is we were looking for these restaurants and we came across used donut equipment on Craigslist. This is back in 2013, and this is kind of where you went to find anything, right? Any restaurant equipment or business opportunities, and we just came across equipment. It was only the equipment, but I saw in the background that it was. I could tell that it was at the Philadelphia Premium Outlets. And we had made a call the next day to the leasing manager, got some information if they would lease space to us, which they said we're more than happy to take a rent check from you. And we were kind of on the fence. We were still trying to decide, is this the right opportunity? We did all the numbers. We had a whiteboard in our first apartment. We crunched all the numbers ourselves, which we encourage anyone that's always getting into business to do so, to really understand what you're getting into and what this could look like on a good day or a bad day. And the numbers were, they were too good. They made absolute sense. Everything just kind of fit together. We said, how can we not do this? And of course, when you're getting started in a new business, there's always still a bit of a push. You need some kind of encouragement or something to get started. It's not always easy to just jump and jump right into it. And for us, we had thought about it, kind of put all the pieces together. And a couple weeks later, we were just about to, we were kind of figuring out what we were doing. I was actually headed into an insurance appointment on a Tuesday morning, and Amanda called me and she said, "Hey, I got fired." And I said, "So we're doing donuts?" And that was our catalyst to get started. And it was really just a shift in the company that she was working for. They were looking for a reason to really get rid of her for no reason at all. So it that encouraged us to move forward. And I think that was then the following weekend, we actually purchased that used equipment, and we were in business maybe about a month and a half later. So we had some hurdles in the beginning, but pushed through that and launched officially Memorial Day weekend of 2014.
Did you keep your job at that time?
I did. So yeah. I was in the insurance industry. I stayed in that role for about another year and a half, actually, at that point. And Amanda headed up operations 7 days a week at the outlets. About a year later, after launching that kiosk, we launched our first mobile trailer. So we had a lot of requests from our customers to show up and pop up at weddings and corporate events and bar mitzvahs and you name it, all the fun stuff. So once we started,
that gave life to that gave life to the idea of a truck or a trailer.
It did, yeah. That's what took us mobile. And once we really started being mobile and also having the kiosk, Amanda said, "You better leave your job. I need help doing this." So yeah. That's where that all came together.
So how often have I heard this story? I got fired and I ended up buying a franchise, and that changed my life. So true in your case with Amanda as well. And I think you made a good choice. You're young. You could take some risks, particularly when you're young. One of you could keep a job for a while. You wanted to avoid brick and mortar, which is understandable, especially today with rent prices. You wanted to be mobile. So that led you to donuts. But before we go there, tell us about the period of time when you worked at Subway. Did you own your own Subway franchise?
I didn't. I was 13. So pretty funny story actually with Subway, kind of round, full circle moment, I guess. Excuse me. I started with Subway at 13 as a sandwich artist. Worked there, I guess, for about a year and a half or 2 years. And I came home every day, and I would say to my parents, "I hate working here. I could never do this." And then fast forward a number of years, later, and actually enjoyed it. I learned a lot and worked for an interesting franchisee, kind of learning what not to do in business and also what type of employees not to hire. So the Subway system itself was interesting to work in. My coworkers and the franchisee that I was working for were not the best, unfortunately, but built some good character, I guess, early on in the quick serve industry. That kind of led me to thinking, maybe I will become a franchisee. But there's actually an interesting story to that as well.
You were not a Subway franchisee, though.
I was not. No, I was 13.
You worked for a franchisee.
Worked for a franchisee, 13 as a sandwich artist.
Well, it was a great place to learn about franchising as well. So tell me that story. You said there was a funny story connected with, or an interesting story connected with becoming a franchisee.
Yeah, so of course, being my first job, I had a bit of emotional connection to Subway. As I progressed through my entrepreneurial journey, later Penn State, I graduated with a small business and entrepreneurship degree. I always kind of thought during that time, I'm going to become a franchisee. I'm going to be a part of this system. I know it works. I've seen others that have 5 or 10 units. They're doing relatively well. And there was actually what was called a global citizen or global student competition held by a company on behalf of Subway. The grand prize was a trip to Subway headquarters in Connecticut. And it was really based on putting together a package where you could potentially open a Subway. And you had to pitch why you would open a Subway, where you would open it, and how you were going to really operate it. It was a 10-minute video. And I put this video together, submitted it. Basically, the winner was chosen based on number of likes. So I think this is back in maybe 2013. It's actually before Donuts. And it was all based on likes. So I had come in second. I was very close. But someone from another country won. And the second prize was actually a video call with a business professor at the time. And I was, still excited. I was still high on the Subway journey, even though I wasn't going to Subway headquarters for this. And he had asked, what are you going to, what do you want to do? And I said, I want to become a franchisee. I really like Subway. And he basically said, this isn't the right fit for you. You are a builder. You enjoy building systems. At the time, I had a vending and amusement business that was very lucrative. It was doing great. I built a couple of other businesses, and he said, you need to build your own system. And at the time, I knew nothing about franchising. I didn't even know that, a regular company, if you will, can be turned into a franchise. And long story short, we ended the call. Amanda got home, and I pretty much all but lost it, just totally upset because my dreams of becoming a Subway franchisee went down the drain. And, we took that, and that's kind of what propelled us into looking for businesses for sale. And then kind of going down the journey that we've taken ever since. So, just because you have your mindset on this is how it's going to be, whether that's as a franchisee or any business, doesn't mean that, that's exactly what you're going to be doing.
Yeah. That is a great story. And as an academic, part of what I like about that story or dislike about that story, here you were at Penn State, a terrific university, getting a degree in small business and entrepreneurship, and you knew nothing about franchising. They didn't teach franchising in that major?
Not at that time, no. So I had attended the Berks campus in the Reading, Pennsylvania area. My college story, if you will, was I was supposed to do 2 years at the Berks campus and then 2 years at State College. And I had an opportunity during my freshman year to start the vending and amusement company, and was never big into the party scene or really socializing so much. I was always into business for as long as I can remember. And kind of in my freshman year, I made the decision if I stay at, or if I start at Berks and then possibly stay there, I could really graduate with a strong business and a really good footing. And that's what I did. So I started my freshman year at Penn State Berks, started my business very shortly after, and the business really took off from there. And very shortly after, I kind of realized maybe staying at Penn State Berks for the 4-year term made the most sense. I can graduate with a strong business, and there was no break then in that 4-year period. But it was a great opportunity, and it allowed me to really graduate with with some money in the bank, and then also with an established business as well.
Yeah, great. So I occasionally get students like you at the Titus Center at Palm Beach Atlantic University. They come in owning a business like you. You owned a business while you were going to college. My last student in that situation was making $10,000 a month in his own online marketing business. And I got to know him pretty well. He was doing $10,000 a month. He does a lot more than that now. He was in my franchise classes. And I love to get students at that age and at that stage of their life because they don't know anything about franchising. Imagine had they taught you franchising in your freshman year, you'd be even further ahead in your franchise career. But universities, most business schools, don't even talk about franchising, unfortunately. Well, we're changing that because more universities are. But it was a disadvantage to you at the time. It still worked out okay, because how did you find franchising? How did that make sense? Was it with that call about Subway?
So I think that was part of it. Of course, I was exposed to other systems like Rita's Italian Ice and a couple
Another
other.
good one, Philadelphia.
Yeah, yeah. So I knew kind of what a system was, and as we developed the business, the donut business ourselves, we in 2016, 2017, were looking forward and towards kind of what is next in this iteration of the business, and we knew we could only bring this so far ourselves. And we really had two options at that point. It was either we continue on a growth path of potentially corporate stores. And we had a lot of great relationships at the time, even still, with Simon Premium Outlets and many other outlet centers, malls. And we knew that was an option to continue on a corporate side. But for us, a lot of our success really came from being involved in the community, for giving back and doing things like fundraisers. So we knew it would be a bit of a struggle to run as company stores throughout the U.S. And we really started to pursue and educate ourselves on what was franchising at that time, because we knew that having a local presence for the brand throughout local neighborhoods across the country could be a very big opportunity, and also was the best way to really connect with our customers.
Mm-hmm. So I have had the advantage of seeing your disc profile, and it's perfect for your venture into franchising. You have that C profile that encourages you, leads you into the fact finding of any business opportunity that you might explore. You're going to spend time looking at the nitty gritty of that business, how it works, how to make it work. You're going to tweak it. You're going to ask questions. You don't believe the numbers. You're going to reinvest time in the numbers and the system and in the process. That works perfectly for you, but you didn't know it at the time in college.
Yeah,
So
definitely not. Definitely didn't know it in college. And kind of going back to the major itself, at the time I was even happy to actually just be able to go for an entrepreneurship degree,
right,
because that was something new that was actually just being offered that year. So
right.
let alone franchising was, is, I think, being able to have a concentration in that is fantastic. And to really learn about it that early on, it's wonderful, because it's such a great industry.
I think Palm Beach Atlantic University in the Titus Center, we are the only ones in the country that I know of, and I don't know of any in the world, and I know lots of people internationally in franchising. We are the only one that offers a concentration in franchising to back up your major, whatever that might be, marketing, management, international business, which I think is really the way to go today. Couple that with franchising, and you're a dynamo. There are a lot of people like you now who want to speak to my graduates because they know about franchising, and they save you 6 months to a year of training when you hire them. If you hire somebody with me who has a marketing degree and a concentration in franchising, you get your money's worth right away by hiring that type of graduate. So we're happy that we're doing that. Other universities are educating about franchising as well. So what did you think about franchising as a young person still in college? Gee, I can't do that, or too complicated, or let me look into it. Did it scare you? Did it invite you in? How did you feel about franchising?
I think even today, we being at the stage we are with how many franchisees we have and having a system and having pretty scalable reach, I would say. We have a lot of people that come up to us still, and they don't understand franchising. Just the general population doesn't even understand what franchising is. They understand McDonald's is a franchise and Chick-fil-A is a semi franchise. So I definitely didn't understand it at the time, and I think most don't, honestly, from what we see firsthand. And I was familiar with becoming a franchisee, kind of always associated it with being expensive, but not having the backing of knowing that you're actually of the system, of the quality of the system that you're getting. And some of the best advice that I received along the way was from very early on from a a development company that had shared with me, it's not so much about my focus on Subway was because the franchise fee at the time was $10,000. And that was attainable to me of I can pay a franchise fee of $10,000, get either an existing store or a new store. But it was really looking at the value of what you're getting. And the advice that was given to me was don't buy based on the franchise fee and the initial upfront. You need to be basing on the value that you're getting from that system, and then of course all the other factors that go into play to help you set up a base to hopefully be successful operating that location.
And the quality of life that a business can provide to you, which maybe you don't mind even at your age now working 7 days a week. But it comes a point when you don't want to do that. You have children, you have other events, activities, travel, things you want to enjoy and do. Maybe watch the Super Bowl. Some franchisees can't do that because of the kinds of businesses they get into. So it's important to know that the franchise is not only going to make you a good living and you're going to enjoy it, but it's going to give you a quality of life that you can't get as an employee, and usually you can't. But there are franchises that you're working 7 days a week, far too many hours, and you burn out quickly.
Absolutely. And that was really going back to why donuts. We had built, start real quick. Going back to why donuts, that was really what drove us in that direction. Was the product was great. It was something that we could personally relate to from our early days of childhood. I remember having mini donuts on a boardwalk. Amanda remembers them from vacations and things herself. But when we take a look at the product being low waste, very low overhead, that was one side of it. The other side was, what does our life look like operating this business? And although we didn't travel, I don't think we took our first vacation for at least 2 years when we started the business. Eventually, we did have the opportunity to really set ourselves up for flexibility. Bringing in 1 or 2 part-time employees helped us to have a better quality of life and really, set a schedule that worked great for us. And over time, as we built the business, we had more and more flexibility to do what we wanted when we wanted, and chose to be involved as much or as little as needed at the time.
So it's mind-boggling the lack of knowledge about franchising, as you discovered in your kiosk when you first got started. People think, well, yeah, that's McDonald's or that's Chick-fil-A, but it's far more than food, and it's far more than those 2 huge brands, and it's not as costly as most people think. So, and you would think, particularly since we've done so well in America with franchising, and we spread franchise brands from the United States across the world, you would think we'd done a better job of informing people about franchising, but we don't. We haven't. People are ignorant about the opportunity to become a franchisee and have their own business. How can that be?
I think just lack of maybe discovery, on behalf of someone that's interested in the business, thinking they could do it themselves easier, or just not really learning what a system really can look like. I think that's the biggest surprise when we have candidates come to visit us at DonutNV HQ, is they say this is really simple, really straightforward. You've laid the groundwork for this. And for us, we're coming up on our 10-year anniversary. So it's been about 7 or 8 years really going into developing the system before we even thought about pushing forward with franchising. We wanted strong proof of concept. And while no franchise is a guarantee at all, like any business, having that backing, but not only from the corporate team as you launch, but then having that ongoing support and having a system to follow is why you're investing in a franchise. So I think just learning more about what your options are as a business owner, and before you go and do it yourself, take a look at really what's out there. And one of the biggest opportunities, I think, from a franchise system too, is the funding options that become available. I know very early on when we first launched, as a franchise, we had very limited options available to us, limited proof of concept, only 1 or 2 franchisees. But as the system grew, more funding options became unlocked for our franchise partners to take advantage of. And that started, of course, with SBA Express loans, and then even fleet funding for the equipment. And many times we're able to see franchisees get financed relatively quickly, 3-4 months, as opposed to a standard bank loan, which is typically pretty hard to secure for a brand new business.
Part of my issue with entrepreneurship and teaching entrepreneurship, it's easy to get people excited about becoming an entrepreneur. But most of the students who come through my system at the Titus Center, they're not cut out to be entrepreneurs. They don't want to take the risks. They may not be as creative. They don't understand what failure is going to do to them. And entrepreneurs tend to fail several times before they hit on something. And then when you expose them to the principles of franchising and you talk about building a system and the value of a system, that anyone can then take a system, not anyone, but more people can take a system and work that system the way the franchisor has developed it and find success in a shorter period of time without taking as great of a risk as the entrepreneur. And that boggles my mind that we don't understand that at the university level and that we don't give young people the option to choose franchising over entrepreneurship. It's not a lesser choice. Some business schools have said it's Mickey Mouse business being a franchisee. You're copying someone else's idea. You're helping someone else to get rich. And even if all that is true, if you get rich too in the process and you gain a quality of life and you sock away money for your old age, what's wrong with franchising? What's wrong with that approach? And that's where we make a mistake in America, in the American educational system. Starting to change a little bit, but grabbing a young student like you and a young person like Amanda and help you get into franchising successfully. I imagine you're very grateful today that you've taken this path with DonutNV.
We are. I mean, we love what we do. The best part about what we're doing is currently we open about 7 or 8 new locations every month. So we're outpacing. We'll be ranked in March as 22nd fastest growing franchise in Entrepreneur Magazine, which is amazing. I think last year we were one in the upper 100 range, ranked for the first time this year on the Franchise 500 at 289. So lots of growth along the way, and it's really coming to fruition full scale, which is awesome. But yeah, it's definitely, it's been great for us. And it's something we would definitely encourage others to be involved with too.
So what's also another mind-boggling thought, you're looking at Craigslist and you see equipment available for making donuts. And that's the genesis of DonutNV, essentially. You didn't have any plan that set you out to go look for equipment to make donuts. You didn't know that this was an opportunity to make donuts. You see the equipment and you decide, let's buy that equipment. Let's rent some space at the outlet mall outside Philadelphia. Let's get into the business. Does that surprise you, the way that happened, the unfolding that the equipment usually comes a little later in the process?
I think we had a plan. We had it written out, like I said, on our whiteboard, and we knew what the business was capable of potentially running it, how we had planned to do. So I think sometimes when people want to get into business, they buy the equipment too early, and then it ends up sitting in their basement or their garage. So you want to have a plan before you actually execute on purchasing equipment and really spending $1 on marketing or anything. But for us, that was kind of the catalyst of, okay, we see this equipment, we see what we can do with it, and we see how we can make it our own, literally actually down the road, very shortly down the road, because we launched and the equipment that we used failed on us only a couple months in. And that actually led us to really search for other equipment and alternatives. And in turn, we ended up distributing the equipment that we now use today exclusively in the US. So it's a European-based piece of equipment exclusively distributed through us. And we've worked with that company for many, many years, building certifications on it, like NSF, for example. So, really full circle on the equipment side too. We took something that wasn't working the best and could be better, and then brought that into our system.
What'd that equipment cost you originally?
I don't remember the exact price. It was a couple $1,000s for the donut machine, but the fun but not so fun at the time backstory to it was We had bought it through a distributor from Singapore. It was shipped from Hungary. Of course, there was some questions about, is this even going to show up? And the box, it was a crate. It was a wooden crate that showed up to our apartment. And we opened it up, we plugged it in, and it didn't work. And there was almost no surprise there because we didn't expect much at the time. And sure enough, we went back to the seller and we said, hey, this is what happened. They were great. And they referred us to the manufacturer and said the manufacturer is willing to help you repair the machine over Skype. So that kind of dates this, right, back to 2014. And we worked with the manufacturer to repair the machine. And they were so impressed that we were able to not only repair the machine. Well, Amanda held the phone and I did the actual repairs and soldering. But they were appreciative that we could actually understand their very strong Hungarian accent. And we really started to form a bond at that time. And over the next couple of months, we started talking about what it could look like as a partnership and distribution. And that later led us to private labeling donut machines. All of our donut machines today are stamped with the DonutNV logo. We proudly back those up in-house with our own warranties, and then able to stock parts and anything replacement needed. So there's really never a reason to be down and out, but that was a real turning point in our growth as well too.
Was there a point where you ever said to Amanda, we should have saved our $2,000 and found a manufacturer that we could have bought the equipment from? It wouldn't have been as good of a story. Would it have saved you time and money? And does that matter in retrospect?
If we were to buy a different donut machine at the time?
Yeah, one that worked.
So it was damaged in shipping, but the equipment itself, there was really no other option. There's only two options on the market. We were using one of the two already, and the issue we had was that when we had a warranty claim and we had a problem very early on, we called and we said, hey, we have an issue. What do we do with this? And they said, well, send it back and we'll return the equipment to you in about 3 weeks. And at the time, we had invested almost everything we had into the business. We were paying rent and we didn't have time to wait for 3 or 4 weeks. And that's actually one of the reasons why we give all of our franchisees 2 donut machines. So they have a primary machine and a backup. So there's never dead time. You're never out. Of course, donuts are the primary product. So we want them to never have downtime. And if something does happen, we have a support line and a back end system to help facilitate those repairs.
Mm-hmm. What's the equipment package cost for a DonutNV?
So what we do is we bundle it as a full trailer package. And the reason we do that is so that it's as turnkey as possible. There's a couple things you're going to source locally, like fresh produce. But what we do is we build the trailers from the axles up. So that's something that we're very proud of. We have a 31,000 square foot facility in southern Georgia with a great team there that heads up trailer production. And then we have our logistics and product supply wing as well too. So that's going to include everything from your donut machines down to your toppings and your first 10 bags of donut mix. So with your total package for your trailer, it's about $115,000. There are some upfits based on the states that it's going to, because every state, city, and township always has different codes. So some of that varies, but we've really tried to standardize things. We're not big on upsells. This isn't a car dealership where we're trying to sell you on extended warranties or extended or additional options and add-ons. We've really tried to build a very solid trailer that can go just about anywhere. Some states do have different regulations, though, that will alter that pricing.
So this isn't a truck. This is a trailer that the franchisee has to pull with a truck or a car?
Correct. It's a towable trailer.
And the trailer is not going to an outlet mall necessarily, or do you set up at outlet malls still today as opposed to going to bar mitzvahs and maybe weddings and special events?
So DonutNV can do it all. And the reason for that is because when it came time to retire our kiosk from the outlet center, we had done that for, I guess, about 2 or 3 years at that point. We were seeing strong success with mobile. And we had to figure out what we were going to do with those kiosks. And at the time, the equipment was pretty much devalued fully, and we were stuck with kiosks. And we were having the success with the trailers, and we saw that there was an opportunity for those trailers to still pop up at the outlet centers, but they could also do the mobile events as well too, the bar mitzvahs and the birthday parties, the corporate events. So we said, well, instead of building Kiosk specifically for outlet centers, for a specific outlet center where it only fits into that architectural plan. And, should you depart that center, it's almost useless. Let's focus on a trailer that can be utilized in a number of different capacities. So of course we do the public events like the food truck festivals, the private events like the catering opportunities I mentioned. But then you have opportunities too to leave the trailers semi-permanently. And for us, that was a big decision to go with the trailer as well, because it keeps costs down compared to an all-in-one tow vehicle or all-in-one truck, like an traditional food truck, if you will. And really helps to encourage expansion with additional equipment. So we have quite a few franchisees that have launched 4 trailers in just their first year, and they're able to station those at different outlet centers. They're able to keep some of them mobile, but if anything changes, let's say the flow of traffic at an outlet center changes and it's not as busy as it once was, you can pick up and go with that trailer, and you're not tied to having that dead equipment in a warehouse.
Yeah. Do you know the name Bill Rosenberg?
I don't.
All right. Well, I got a good story for you. Bill Rosenberg is a founder of the International Franchise Association. But prior to that, Bill Rosenberg and his brother-in-law up in Boston, Massachusetts, were probably the first food trucks. I don't know if anyone preceded them, but the way he told the story, they were the first to take these trucks out to construction sites, and they would sell breakfast early morning, and then to come back with lunch food in the afternoon. Bill was the entrepreneur. He was the salesman. He could establish routes. He could get people involved in the business. He was a great recruiter. And his brother-in-law was the bean counter or the accountant who kept track of all the products and what they sold for and how much money they made off products. One day, Harry, the brother-in-law, says to Bill, of all the products we sell on the trucks, which 2 products do you think are the most profitable? And Bill had no interest in this because he was an entrepreneur. Entrepreneurs don't count. Entrepreneurs aren't interested in that. They only count things that matter. How many of this do we have that makes us the largest or the best or whatever? Well, Bill sort of rolled his eyes, and Harry said, coffee and donuts. And Bill said, then Harry, stop selling everything else. Only sell coffee and donuts. Harry said, come on, that's ridiculous. We're not going to do that. We need the sandwiches. We need the sodas. We need et cetera, candy bars. We need it all. But we make most of our money off coffee and donuts. That never left Bill's mind. He couldn't stop thinking about coffee and donuts. This was in the 1950s. There were not a lot of brick and mortar shops that were selling coffee and donuts at the time. So Bill tried to get Harry to start one with him. Harry resisted it, said, bad way to go. Bill takes off with his wife on a vacation, cross country, Boston to LA and back, gone 2 different routes, comes back, and he had found a few coffee donut shops, and he said, Harry, we're going to open one. And Harry said, I'm not for it, won't do it. The brothers-in-law broke up over that. Bill bought out Harry, and Bill started a coffee and donut shop. Which one do you think it is? You know.
Would that be Dunkin'?
Dunkin' Donuts, yes. And Bill wrote a book that I use in the classroom, not so much anymore, Time to Make the Donuts, but his son, Robert, has a terrific book. You should read that, about managing Dunkin' Donuts. I think Robert was the leader of the company for about 30 years. And tells a fantastic story in that book, Around the World and Around the Corner. Something like that is the title. Look that up and you'll find that interesting. So Bill needed to help make franchising more formidable and to make it more legitimate, because in the 1950s and 60s, there were a lot of startups that were not for real. People taking money at franchise expos, promising to get you started in a franchise that never developed. And that's why Bill and some colleagues then decided to petition the United States government. And that's why we have a franchise disclosure document today. It makes franchising legitimate. And I want to go back to that. Aside from the story of Bill Rosenberg, who was a terrific gentleman always, and in franchising, you find this a lot. People are willing to help you, even if you're the competition. DeLuca was that way. He'd be willing to tell you the do's and the don'ts. And Bill Rosenberg was very much that way. But franchising by 1979 was regulated by the federal government, and the International Franchise Association was already established by this time and working alongside with government regulators to make sure that if you're going to invest in a franchise in America, you've got some protections. And we know it as the Franchise Disclosure Document. But when you ran into that FDD, and you were told that you probably need to have a lawyer, a franchise attorney. In fact, not probably, you do need one. How did that hit you? That, wait a minute, this is a lot of money. This is answering 23 points of information, including personal information about myself. Do I really want to do this to become a franchisor? How did you think about that?
Well, I think going back to the disc profile, we spent some time really thinking hard about it. We were trying to understand the process and more so the financial commitment, because I don't think most understand the initial financial commitment just to be able to sell a franchise and to establish an FDD, especially to a secured attorney as well. So, for us, that took about a year and a half to really gather the funds and to move in that direction.
Right.
It wasn't really so much a question as to would we be willing to publish that information. It was just gathering it and actually assembling it all together to make sure we were doing so accurately.
Yeah, it's a big commitment, but it's a necessary commitment, and it certainly has helped, not only with the legitimacy of franchising, but giving the buyer a feeling of comfort that they know what they're getting into, and they have the opportunity to speak with franchisees of a brand before they commit any money to buy into that brand. How long was it then you got your FDD, and that gave you the ticket to be able to say, hey, we've got franchises for sale? How long did that take? A year and a half. Was the FDD done in the year and a half, or were you making the decision over that period of time and getting the money together?
So we were really making the decision in that time. I think that started maybe 2016 or early 2017, really understanding what our options were. We didn't know much about the industry. So there's a lot of sales companies out there that will put together a manual for you. They'll do some of that back end work. But once that work is completed, then what do you do next? And for us, we completed all of our documents. We had everything ready to officially sell December of 2018. But then it was, what do you do now? How do you actually sell a franchise?
Right.
And one of the pieces of advice and wisdom I like to share is, as you're coming up through your business, as you're starting, for us it was 2014. From 2014 through the time we were actually able to sell franchises in December of 2018, I can't tell you how many people expressed an interest in wanting to buy a franchise of Cinnamony Donuts. And we had a very long list of people that were interested or supposedly interested. And once we actually had the documents and we were able to sell, not one of them moved forward as a franchisee. So It's just, it's a process, but that gave us validation to the concept that we had so that we could move forward in that direction, get everything together, and then really present ourselves initially in a professional manner. And then we spent that next year in 2019 going out, being a part of different events and trying to understand what we didn't know at the time. And it took us a full year to sell our first franchise. We sold our first franchise December 26th of 2019. So it was a relatively slow process. I mean, I think especially in our industry, but in really business in general, I think when you're looking at franchising, many times the question is, do I invest anywhere from $50,000 to $100,000 into franchising, or do I buy a second donut truck or buy additional equipment? And that's a very hard hurdle for most entrepreneurs and potential franchisors to really swallow, because I could be buying a tangible truck today and making money tomorrow, or do I invest in documents and paperwork that isn't going to become very lucrative for much time? Much time down the road. And for us, it was a relatively slow journey of sold our first franchise December 2019. Second franchisee came on board February 1st of 2020, headed into COVID with two franchisees. Exited COVID with two franchisees. Exited end of the year 2021 with 7 franchisees, 22 with 40, and now 23 with almost over 130 franchisees. So,
Yeah, that's a great
all
story.
good things take time,
Yeah.
and it's definitely a building process.
Yeah. So December 2014, that's when you were eligible to sell because you had your disclosure document completed at that point. Is that correct?
December 2018.
December 2018.
18,
Um,
yep.
Okay, so but it was about a 4-year period. I think that's where I got the 2014 confused. So December 2018, you could sell a franchise. How much money did you have invested by December 2018? You hadn't made any money yet from franchising because you couldn't sell a franchise till you had that disclosure document. How much money was sitting there waiting, counting on that disclosure document being the opening the door to franchise sales?
I think it was roughly in the neighborhood of about $50,000, somewhere right around there,
Okay.
which, we had saved up most of our money from operations, everything we could afford to put away towards that. So, it was a pretty sizable chunk.
And then you sell a franchise, and then you begin to sell a couple of more. But how much money by the time of COVID had you invested? By the time of COVID, you had 2 franchisees?
We had 2 franchisees as of right before February 1st, 2020.
The cost of selling a franchise, it's not, okay, we can put an ad in the paper for $150 and we'll get a sale. It doesn't work that way, does it?
It doesn't. No, a lot of it, especially in your with your first few franchisees in particular, a lot of it is really either through happenstance and I've heard some really cool, crazy stories about how people have secured their first franchisee. For us, it's actually another full circle moment. We had pulled out of the Philadelphia Premium Outlets from a kiosk standpoint, but we were back with the trailer for pop-up events, and we happened to be on site Memorial Day weekend of 2019. And we were there just for the weekend, for the holiday weekend. Amanda had went around sampling donuts to the stores just to let them know that we were there, that we were doing an employee discount. And funny enough, there was a store directly next to the kiosk where we first started. And the store manager at the time was not familiar with Sid Mini Donuts. That was their first time trying a DonutNV donut. And he was actually looking for an opportunity to start his own business. And we went through the process with him. And about 6 or 7 months later, he became our first franchisee, with DonutNV. So that was really, really neat. But it was a lot of time leading up to that, and then significant financial commitment as well. And that just continues even today.
Going back and somewhere in this process, you and Amanda must have asked the question, why donuts? I mean, and maybe you didn't, because you've got a great story. You bought the equipment to make donuts before you even had a plan for making and selling donuts or franchising a donut type of business. At what point did you know there's room for us in the marketplace? Sure, there are big donut retailers, 2 big brands that immediately come to mind, and several more brands beyond. Why would we get into the donut business? You can get a donut at the grocery store.
So we like donuts because they're easily identifiable. It's as easily identifiable as pizza and French fries. So you don't have to explain to someone what a donut is. That's one of the best parts, I think. The second is from really day one, it was more than just donuts. It was always an interactive experience because we had plexiglass where our customers could watch the donuts being made. So it was always about that action and being able to be a part of that interactive experience, which we then took to a mobile side and made it an interactive mobile experience. And it's essentially an open mobile kitchen on wheels. So now you're able to watch your donuts being made, watch the juices being squeezed fresh on the trailer. There's no concentrates with our lemonades. We add flavor syrups if you'd like, but our original lemonade is truly lemon, sugar, and water. And that's very difficult to actually find today because just about everything is concentrate based, and it's a quality product.
So that point about your customers can watch the donuts being made, that point was made by Bill Rosenberg back in the 1950s, pre-Dunkin' Donuts. And in fact, his first shop was not called Dunkin' Donuts. His first shop was called Open Kettle, because when you walked in, there was the kettle of donuts being fried. But Open Kettle was the wrong name. People didn't equate that with donuts. And one day, sitting around his kitchen table talking to his team of people who were helping him, including a lawyer and an accountant, and he said it's the wrong name, Open Kettle. You pluck a chicken, but what do you do with a donut? And it might have been the accountant or the lawyer who said, well, you dunk a donut. And there was the name Dunkin' Donuts. So you never did then, even though you've got a C profile on the DISC scale, which means that you do research. You want to know facts. You don't care about does it make your head spin? Does it make your heart pound faster? You want to know the facts about any situation. But did you ever do a market study that said DonutNV, it wasn't DonutNV at the time, but DonutNV will be accepted by the marketplace and they're going to buy millions of them? Did you ever have any evidence to tell you that?
So there's two parts to it. So one was our whiteboard in our apartment where we broke all the numbers down and figured out cost of daily rent. If we were working it as owner operator, we knew there really wasn't labor involved, and then supply costs. So we had that data, and we knew, I think for us at the time, I think the cost was about $65 a day. And we said, as long as we can sell $65 a day in donuts, we'll cover our overhead and anything else is gravy. And then our in-person market research was sitting on a bench at the outlet center for, I can't even count how many hours over a number of different days, weekends, nights, weekdays, really understanding, is there actual traffic here? And we sat on the bench and just watched and counted. And the kind of the consensus was it shouldn't be that hard to sell $65 a day. And that's where we ended up pulling the trigger and moving forward.
So what's a franchisee have to sell today to cover costs? It's not $65 anymore, I take it.
Well, we've of course changed our equipment. We've really upped the visual presence of the brand, and it's much more than a mom and pop setup that we had at the time. Of course, it was always very professional, but at the time it was very grassroots as well. So daily costs, of course, is going to vary based on how you start your business. If you're financing, paying cash, how many territories you have, how many trailers you have, how many employees you're using. But for us, in the concept, we've made it very streamlined where the typical trailer can be manned by 2, if not 3 employees, very low waste, very low overhead, and you're picking and choosing where you're going to, what events you're going to be a part of. If you're choosing those private events, those catering events, you're not dealing with fees, you're not dealing with typical added costs of paying to be somewhere. But then on the flip side, when you're involved in the public events, we're donating back through fundraisers and give backs to the local community and local events that way as well too. Mm-hmm. So there's a couple different facets to how the business operates, but daily operational costs will really vary if you're owner operator, if you're managing your manager in a somewhat semi-absentee role, lots of variability.
Do you file an item 19 in your disclosure?
We do.
Okay, so you can tell us. I want to buy a $115,000 investment. I don't see DonutNV down here in West Palm Beach. I've got several thousand students over on the campus. They love donuts. I think I'm going to invest. I'm going to do it as an absentee owner because I love teaching about franchising. I'm not ready to give that up. What's it going to cost me, the $115,000? And what do you disclose in your item 19? How long will it be till I get break even? What kind of money can I expect to make?
So total investment will actually range from about $185,000 to roughly mid 220 range. So there's a number of factors in there. Of course, initial franchise fee, startup cost, tow vehicle, insurance. So there's a lot that we want to factor in more than just the trailer. having additional capital on hand is really important as well too. How you choose to budget that is entirely up to you. We call it, I believe, 3 to 6 months minimum, but the more you have on hand, the better. That's always a strong recommendation. In terms of what the item 19 looks like, that's based on our company trailer that's actually still based out of the southeastern Pennsylvania area. And that services the mainline area. So that's going to be Villanova and many of the other large schools in that area. Yeah. So for us, that's where we make up a lot of our events. Typically, I believe in 2022, our top line gross sales are about $200,000 with roughly an 83% net to the adjusted gross sales. So really that was product cost. Doesn't include labor, doesn't include some other variable factors that are very important to consider. But when we look at the actual product itself and the presentation of the system, the margins are very strong on the product. And then it's really up to the individual franchisee to choose how they're going to run their business, how they're going to manage labor, how they're going to manage event costs, and really put the business together specifically for their operation.
Yeah, and that's a good point. People miss that point, that as a franchisee, it's not true that it's turnkey when you buy a franchise. You've got to do some work. You've got to do your research, and you've got to make some decisions about, are you going to do more catering than you're going to do other opportunities, setting up someplace semi-permanently or whatever it might be. You've got to make some decisions about what's going to suit you, your business, your finances. What can you afford? So there are 2 points that I want to make sure we cover. You have a flat royalty. What does that mean? What is that flat royalty?
We do. So currently we have a flat royalty that starts at $125 a week. It scales in year 2, year 3, and then it's flat from years 3 through 10. Then we, of course, have a brand fund fee and a tech fee as well, too. Total cost on all of our fees all in right now is about $11,900 a year. So right under $1,000 a month. But what that does is that's your contribution to, of course, the marketing from a corporate aspect. That's going to be access to technology, so things like your website listing. We do social media management. Of course, franchisees are encouraged very highly to tell the story about who they are and what they're all about locally, especially through social media. But there's backing from DonutNV Corporate, assisting with pushing content to their pages with content creation. We also work off of an iPad program, so an iPad access included in that as well too, monthly. That works as your hotspot in your trailer. So there's a lot that's tied in and included in those fees. But the flat royalty for us has been a great opportunity to allow franchisees to scale and essentially not be penalized for success. So if you want to work a couple weekends a year, you know exactly what you're going to be paying. You can budget for that accordingly. If you want to be out twice a day and 3 times on Sunday, doing events and hustling, you're going to keep more in your pocket. And of course, our goal is to help garner and promote additional expansion as well too, which we see quite often. So if a franchisee is hustling, they're doing great. They're going to add more equipment, more trailers, more territory, and grow and represent the system even better over time.
So is there anything else in your FDD that allows you to make money other than the upfront fee and the royalty? These other fees that you charge, you may make some money from them, but that's usually not significant. It's usually royalty, where a franchisor, once you get enough franchisees, 100 franchisees, which 2/3 of franchisors don't even reach, so you're already past that. But you don't get to 100, it's difficult to get enough royalty flow. And through the years and working with startup franchisors, you're beyond that now. But getting that mid-range franchisor, they discover the flat rate royalty does not provide them with enough money to keep investing in the business the way a franchisor has to. Do you see that becoming a problem down the road?
For DonutNV, no. It was designed very early on to be sustainable. So we knew exactly how the growth, how that growth curve would look, what the flat rate royalty meant to the system. And we do have proprietary donut mix. We have other products like toppings that we do receive a rebate on. And of course, that's disclosed in our item 19.
Yeah.
So there's other factors at play. I think the biggest thing is to offer a system that, again, is sustainable, both on the corporate side, but for the franchisee, and allows that growth. And that's what we've worked really hard to build. We know how much time goes into operating a trailer. And although we're providing the equipment and the training and the resources, it's still up to the individual franchisee to kind of make the magic happen, if you will, locally.
Yeah.
And we know the volume of work that goes into that. So that's why we follow the model we do. We're very happy with it. And I believe our franchisees would share that same sentiment as well, because they're choosing how much they work or don't.
Another point that we've already mentioned, I have about a 40-some year career in franchising. Starting in 1979, I was in Philadelphia at the time. Love Philadelphia. I think it's the greatest city in the world. Lots of people don't agree with me, but that's okay. I love Philadelphia. And I was a professor at Temple University. And I wrote a book, Franchising the Inside Story, which changed my life, got me into franchising. But for probably 30, 35 of the years that I've spent in franchising, the word absentee rarely ever surfaced. And when it did, it was shot down very quickly. That franchisors would make it clear, this is not an absentee opportunity. You invest in a franchise. One of the reasons why you make money, why franchisees make money, more money out of their business than a managed business makes, is because franchisees work harder and have better systems, but work harder than managers generally will work. But now in the last 5 years, absentee is all over social media. Invest in this, invest in that, and keep your job. It's an absentee ownership opportunity. I don't believe it, at least not in most cases that are being offered. And I caution my students about this. And one student who bought a service business thought he was buying an absentee opportunity. I guess he didn't show up on the days when I said, don't do that. He held it for about 2 years. He had to work it, but it wasn't what he wanted to do. He has other interests. He now has another completely different type of service franchise that he loves, but he's working in it all the time. You are okay with absentee ownership? Do the absentees make as much money as the fully committed franchisees in your network? How's that working? What do you think about it?
Yeah, so I mean, when you're taking a look at a franchise opportunity, or really any business, I guess, you have owner-operator model, what's referred to as semi-absentee, which we're very clear about saying I think that's a very bad industry term, as you shared. It really should be regarded as managing the manager. And that's how we refer to it. Anytime we talk about that, you will almost never hear me say semi-absentee, because I couldn't agree with you more on that. And then, of course, full absentee. Those are your typical 3 options across really any business. Owner-operator or managing the manager is going to be really an individual decision. We see both successful in the DonutNV system. We have a lot of great owner-operators that have multiple units. They're growing. They're very happy. They've left their corporate America jobs or whatever they were doing previously. And it works great. 1, 2, 3, even 4 trailers. We see that. With managing the manager, it's definitely, having some management experience and understanding that you have to hire the right team. Not anyone can just fill in and run a trailer or whatever the business may be. Having someone that understands what the goal of the business is really important. And then being able to have them potentially sharing that success through some type of bonus structure or a fair compensation model is very, very important, so that they're just as motivated as the franchisee to succeed. Less often we see the full absentee model. I believe we see it with a very small handful of our franchisees. So typically they're going to fall in one of the first 2 buckets. I think it's possible, but again, you have to have a very strong management background to hire the right people to put in place to then work on your behalf, more as an investor at that point.
Managing the manager is a science of its own, separate from franchising. And so that's why I caution people about it. Sure, Target, Starbucks, Chipotle. Everybody thinks that's a franchise. No. In-N-Out Burger. No. They're managing the managers. And that's a full-time job. if I'm going to have a full-time job, I'd rather be a franchisee, and knowing that I don't have to worry about, is the guy or the gal over at this location doing what needs to be done to make sure that we both make money today? Now, I'd rather have that in my hands. But that also leads to, what's your personality as a franchisee? And hopefully you're looking at that, because you can see the value of the DISC profile. Every franchisee should be taking a DISC profile so that you know, I can look at my top 10 franchisees and I see their DISC profile. It's probably very similar. Getting one who's opposite of that profile probably is going to end up in your bottom 10 franchisees, the 10 you wish you had never sold. And every franchisor has those. But I think if you watch that, if you pay a lot of attention, and that's part of managing the manager, which is part of what a franchisor is doing, managing the franchisee, that's a science too. And franchisors need to be able to accomplish that skill in order to get scale, as I know you want to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, understanding really what your tolerance is for a particular business, and being willing to really weather the storm, whatever that may be. You know, just because you're starting with the tools and the training, the equipment, you know, you really have to drive that growth. And that's something to really understand and make sure that before you're getting into any business, you understand that there's going to be ups and downs. It's something we stress during our confirmation days, is really the life cycle of an entrepreneur. It's a roller coaster that just goes up and down. And you have some really great days. You have some really not so great days, but there's a lot of good in between days too, that, you can step back and take joy in what you're doing, and, really ride the wave. That's what it's all about. So understanding, can your personality and can you personally, when I say personally, I think it's so important to make sure that anyone that is involved around the decision of becoming a business owner is part of that decision, whether that be a spouse or other family members or partners or friends. That's something to make sure that you don't need everyone around you to support you necessarily. We had a lot of friends very early on tell us that donuts were never going to work, and this concept wasn't going to work. But the core people around you, it's really important to make sure that anyone that's going to be involved is on board, and they understand kind of what this journey is going to look like, because you need cheerleaders on your team. You need people that are there to help champion your success, especially over that initial launch period, but then for many years to come as you continue to grow.
When he was 17 years old and he started what became Subway, a lot of people told Fred DeLuca, this is never going to work. And he built the world's largest franchise system, at least in terms of numbers of locations. I think it's great what you and Amanda are doing, Alex. You're young, you have opportunity to learn, you've seen success at an early age, you realize the value of getting into business early. The Gen Zs today who are in college, those are my students. 95% of them want to be in a business of their own. And it's guys like you who help them get there. As you know, the Titus Center has an advisory board. I have more than 100 franchise professionals on that board, one of them being a franchisor who fell in love with what we do at the Titus Center, comes to speak to the students, has hired students as interns, recently decided that he would waive the franchise fee for any graduate of the Titus Center, because they know a great deal about franchising. They know more about franchising than the average first-year franchisee would know about franchising. So we've been very, very fortunate in having the support of the professional franchise community, with franchisors participating as mentors of my students, participating at the advisory board level, sponsoring events that we do, coming into the classroom, and in the case of Thomas Scott in Nashville, franchisor of 3 or 4 different concepts, he waives that franchise fee, which is much appreciated. He has sold 4 or 5 of my graduates' franchises to date, and I want to continue. I want to watch that as it continues to develop. So I want to thank you for this time. You have an envious story with DonutNV, and lots of people who want to get involved in what you're doing. You have your father involved in the business as well. It's a family business in franchising. And so you really got a tremendous opportunity ahead of you. And I know you're going to take great care of it and develop it into a brand name that we're going to see worldwide at some point.
That's the plan.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for tuning in to the Franchise Hot Seat Podcast with Dr. John P. Hayes. Tune in next time for more conversation around all things franchising.